Hello, this is Mrs. Porter. We are reading This Is Not a Drill. This is chapter 21, Emery. We're starting on page 191. Michael Higgins. He had a name and maybe a girlfriend, or a wife and a kid, a family who will never see him again, because he came to help us and Stutz killed him. He was probably some guy who thought he'd work a cushy job as a security guard at a little elementary school where nothing ever happens, and now he's dead. Brian Stutz is a murderer, not just someone who's killed in the heat of battle in Iraq, but a murderer who shot a man in cold blood in front of a room full of first graders. He killed a man who was doing his job, trying to protect little kids from danger. Jake pulls me to him and I lean into his side. Then he turns the TV off, or turns the sound off on the TV, which has returned unbelievably to regular programming. He rubs his hand lightly across his lower back, and my whole body responds to the familiarity of his slight touch. Poor Simon's actually asleep again. Rose reaches up and hands Lambie off to Jake. She motions for him to come closer and whispers something to him, and he walks back to the front and passes the stuffed animal to Patrick. Patrick grabs it eagerly and hugs it. Jake gives Patrick's head a playful tousle and goes back to sit with the kids. There's a low buzzing noise, and Stutz reaches into his pocket. He looks at the phone, swears, and throws it across the room. It hits the wall with a bang that makes everyone jump, except Simon, who sleeps on. Jake frowns and opens his mouth to say something, but thinks better of it. I walk over and pick up the phone. It's remarkably undamaged. I walk back to Stutz and hand it to him. He puts it back in his pocket without looking at it. Your wife, I ask? No. Tucker? He ignores me, still watching the door. After a long pause, he says, Tucker needs help. I got nothing to give him. He looks up at the clock, 12:26. I'm tired of being Tucker's mama. He's got problems. At first, he doesn't seem to see the irony in his comment, and then, yeah, we all got problems. What happened to him over there? He reaches up to wipe sweat from his forehead. You wouldn't understand, he says. I want to understand. I glance at Jake. He's sitting on the floor against the back wall near the kids, pretending to doze. But I know he's watching us. The girls whisper to each other. People want you to tell it straight, but it doesn't happen straight. It comes at you from all sides like a tornado. There's no way you can describe it. It's like a bad dream. I listen without speaking. Tucker's not right. Not since that night it happened. It was Tucker. Tucker was the one, he says. Something I can't hear. Tucker was the one who what? Tucker was the one who shot her. Who did he shoot? He didn't mean to. It was a mistake. We all make mistakes. I wait for him to continue. The sun goes behind a cloud and the room turns chilly. And then he begins in a low, urgent voice. We were on a cordon and search mission to find the insurgents that attacked our forward operating base the night before. A group of them hit our FOB with rockets and Mortimers, and one of our guys was killed. Gates, he was 18. Nice kid, but clueless. Only been in Iraq a few weeks. About as useful as a screen door in a submarine. He shakes his head. The newbie, they show up in full battle rattle, thinking they're ready to fight. They're babies. Stutz glances at the babies in the room, like he'd forgotten about them until he said the word. That night, Gates was killed. He'd left his cell phone in the tent where we bunked, and it rang all night long. Caller ID said home. We knew we couldn't answer. His family had to be notified officially through channels. And if we turned it off, it'd be like telling them. None of us slept at all, listening to the dang phone just ringing and ringing. So we were already tired when we headed out. Our platoon leader said we had a pretty good idea of where the attack came from, so about 30 of us rolled out just after midnight. The late night surprise factor gives us the advantage. Plus, it's 110 during the day. You work at night. In our vehicle, it was me and Tucker, a guy named Pitts, and a guy named William P. Jones, we called Wimpy. Stutz is speaking almost naturally, like he's traveled backward in time in a saner version of himself. What makes the heat so bad is we're wearing 70 pounds of gear. Body armor with front and rear ceramic plates, 210 rounds of ammo, first aid kit, strap cutter, radio, a 70-ounce camel pack of water, food, spare batteries, you name it. It's like we're wearing a dang minivan. Add knee pads and boots and you don't go anywhere without your weapon. It becomes another appendage. And believe me, once you see a guy lose a chunk of his skull, you're going to wear that ACH, Army Combat Helmet, which is also hot as heck. Tucker used to get his wife to send us those girly mini pads to stick inside the helmet for sweat guards. He smiles at the image, and I smile too. We secured the area that night, about half a city block, and moved in. Our search of the first two houses turned up nothing but a bunch of scared, angry Iraqis in their PJs. His tone becomes defensive. Don't look at me like that. I don't like busting into people's homes in the middle of the night, but it's the price you pay for freedom. If we want to flush out insurgents, we have to go in where they're hiding, and sometimes that means people have to lose a little sleep. People besides me. I wait for him to continue. You learn pretty quick not to trust anybody. Old man in the market, kid with a soccer ball, anybody can be hiding a weapon. They'll smile in your face one minute and fire on you the next. I tried to tell Tucker that. He was buddies with all the kids. They came all around all the time to see him. I kept telling him one of them was going to lob a grenade in the mess hall one day while they were shooting baskets in the ghetto goal he rigged up. He runs his hand across his short hair. Third house we got to was dark and shadowy, with a small courtyard in front of it. Wimpy said he didn't like the look of it. Come on, boys, gotta go out on a limb, Tucker told us, 'cause that's where the fruit is. Tucker's always saying crazy stuff. Like if a bug hit the windshield of the Jeep, he'd say, bet he doesn't have the guts to do that again. If he caught some guy picking his nose, he'd say, digging for gold. He loved the dumb joke about being stuck between Iraq and a hard place. Stutz leans forward, focused on his story. There were 8 in our squad. The other 4 were in the vehicle ahead of us. 2 guys headed around the house to check out the perimeter, and Wimpy, Tucker, Pitts, and I waited for the other 2 to create the opening. There were some pop shots nearby, so we were jittery. That and no sleep. When they busted down the door, we entered the house. Tucker and Pitts took the kitchen, and Wimpy and I moved in fast to the other rooms and rounded up 5 people. An old man, a teenage boy, a woman, a little kid, and a baby. We brought the family in the living room with their hands on their heads. The old man and the boy didn't make a sound, but the woman was crying and jabbering at us, and the baby she was holding was screaming. I asked them if they spoke English, but got no response. Most Iraqis in the village don't speak English. But even if they do, it's impossible to get information because they know what'll happen if they talk. The insurgents need to hide in the villages, so they run their own night raids. They'll go in and kill a family member, sometimes even a child or a grandmother, to show their brutality and ensure cooperation. We shoved them all in a bathroom so we could search the house for weapons. We'd done so many of these raids, we can wrap them up pretty quick. You move fast, but the whole time you're ransacking the house, you know that any place could be booby-trapped. Tucker yelled for me to come in the kitchen. Pitts was holding a plastic food container he'd pulled out of the refrigerator full of wires and plastic pieces. I took the container over to the bathroom where Wimpy was watching the family from the door. Who does this belong to? I yelled at them. The teenage boy looked away, and the mother started crying hysterically, dropping to her knees and hanging on Wimpy's leg. Tie the kid up, I said. We're taking him in. When I got back to the kitchen, Tucker was digging through the trash. He looked up at me to say something, and all of a sudden, he wheeled around and aimed his weapon at an open door. Crap, he yelled, lowering his gun when the red dot of his sight landed on the forehead of a young girl in the doorway. She smiled a big, toothy grin and said, Hello, Tucka, USA. Nala, what the heck? You can't show up like that. You're going to get killed. Put your hands on your head, I yelled at her. It's okay, Tucker said. I know her. You know all of them, I said. Doesn't mean crap. Tucker ignored me and said to the girl, Do you live here? I'm living this house, she said, pointing next door. I hear sound while I'm sleeping. Well, go back home, Tucker told her. You don't need to be in the middle of this. You know the boy who lives here, I asked. About 15, little guy. Farrad, he's my cousin. Farrad is good boy, Nala said. We are a peaceful family. Go USA. Yeah, well, your peaceful cousin's been building some bad stuff. Tucker held out the wires. No, these are good people, she insisted. We are a peaceful family. Then suddenly the living room erupted in gunfire, and we were under fire from outside of the house. Tucker threw himself on the girl and hit the floor. He pulled her out of the doorway as I crawled toward it, aiming my rifle around the corner of the frame. "Aw, Jesus, she's hit," I heard Tucker say. I could see people running outside, and there was shooting. I heard Pitts yell something from the other room, and Tucker left the girl to crawl toward them. I fired on an attacker fleeing the scene, but he got away. I looked over at the girl. Her eyes were closed, and a dark stain was spreading across her shirt. I thought she was gone, but then I heard her groan. When I go to the main room, Pitts was standing beside Tucker, who was crouched over Wimpy, lifting the upper half of his body and saying, oh man, no," over and over again. A dead Iraqi man was laying near the door. The bathroom door was open. All of them were dead, most of them shot in the head, execution style. I turned away from the baby and felt the vomit rise in my throat. I moved to Tucker's side. He was talking to Wimpy nonstop. "Come on, buddy, stay with us. You can do it. Hang in there, Wimpy. I got you, man. You're going to be okay." Tucker tried to make him hear me. "Tucker," he kept on. "Tucker, he's gone." Tucker finally looked up at me, then back at the place where a piece of Wimpy's head was missing. "Come on, Tuck." "Pitts, help me carry him out," I said. I could hear gunfire further down the street. Where the rest of the platoon had gone, but things had gone quiet on our end, which could be a good sign or a bad one. They carried Wimpy while I covered them. The rest of our squad appeared, and I motioned for them to load Wimpy in their vehicle. I told them I was going back in for the girl and Pitts to find our platoon leader to request permission to take her to the hospital. "Nala," Tucker said, and turned to go with me. "No, man, you stay here. I need you guys to cover me while I bring her out." I crouched low and re-entered the house. The girl opened her eyes and looked up at me as I lifted her. She weighed almost nothing, even though she was probably 9 or 10 years old. "It's okay. We're going to get you some help," I told her. I made it out the front door and halfway to the vehicle when Tucker opened fire, aiming at something behind me. I wheeled around just in time to see a woman crumple to the ground. Nala saw her too. For the rest of my life, I'll hear that scream. "Mama." And then she went limp in my arms. I laid the girl on the back seat and ran over to the woman on the ground. I rolled her over and slipped off her headscarf. Her eyes, sightless, stared straight ahead. A beautiful young Iraqi woman. Tucker had shot her through the neck. I reached for her hand under her skirt to check her pulse, and something fell out, a candlestick. She was holding a dang candlestick. The flame had gone out. All Tucker saw was the glint of moonlight on metal. And then Tucker was there beside me, staring at the candlestick. "She had a gun. She would have killed you. I saw it. I swear to God it was a gun." I just looked at him. There was nothing I could say. I reached down and closed the dead woman's eyes. Tucker dropped to the ground beside her, and his hands over his head, rocking back and forth, crying, "Oh God, I killed her. I killed Nala's mother." "Tucker, we have to go," I said, putting a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't know, man. I would have done the same thing. You couldn't take a chance. You were covering me just like I would have covered you." It was like he didn't want to hear me. "Come on, man," I said. "We've got to get the kid to the medic." There was a U.S. hospital not far away. Pitts came around the corner just then with our platoon leader and about a dozen others. "Nala," I said, trying to get Tucker's attention. "We got to help Nala." Tucker got up and stumbled, glassy-eyed, to the Humvee and climbed in beside the girl. When he moved next to her, she opened her eyes and started screaming hysterically. As our 4-vehicle convoy moved out, the yelling turned to whimpering, and at some point she lost consciousness. When we got to the hospital, the others carried Wimpy to the morgue, and Tucker carried Nala's limp body in. The blood had seeped through, covering most of her shirt. Her face was grayish. The doctor took her back. Tucker was a wreck. The doc came out after a few minutes, shaking his head, telling us she was gone. Stutz looked back at the windows, but I know he's seeing Wimpy and Nala's mom. The heck of it is, I still see that scene every time I lie down to sleep. That little girl in her bloody shirt screaming for her mother, dead because she lit a candle in the dark. Tucker never got over it. He felt like he'd killed Nala too. Stutz turned to me suddenly with an abrupt change of tone. "Yeah, they train us on our weapons, but there's no training for killing a human being. And when you're taking away the life of a peaceful citizen who turns out to be unarmed, how do you get over that?" Stutz's voice dropped so that I have to lean forward to hear. "Soldiers make mistakes. Bad stuff happens when you put high-powered weapons in the hands of 18-year-olds. Killing civilians is part of war. But how do you stop feeling like a murderer?" Tucker turned to me one night when we were out on patrol, and he asked me what we were doing there in Iraq. I said we came to protect the people from tyranny? And he said, no. I said, we came to honor our beliefs and protect our country. And he said, no. I said, we came to help some rich people get richer because Tucker was always saying it was a rich man's war, but a poor man's fight. He said, no. What we're doing here, he said, is just trying to stay alive. Our only goal is to make it home. We ended on page 202.